Before there was Luke Skywalker, before Captain Kirk, and even before Superman flew across the sky, there was Buck. The name Buck Rogers might sound old school, maybe even a little corny. But if you love science fiction, you owe this guy a massive debt. He's arguably the person who invented the modern sci-fi hero. He was the original man out of time. A hero from our present, flung into a dangerous, dazzling future. His adventures, which started almost a century ago, built the foundation for nearly every space opera and futuristic epic we binge-watch and read today. So how did this character come to be? And why does he still matter in a world that has finally caught up to his futuristic predictions? Today, we're setting our blasters to stun as we explore the enduring legacy of the grandfather of American science fiction. The first thing you have to realize is that the iconic character you know wasn't even named Buck at first. His story started in the pages of a pulp magazine called Amazing Stories back in 1928, a kind of ground zero for the sci-fi genre. The novella was called Armageddon 2419 AD, and the hero was actually named Anthony Rogers. His origin story is a classic sci-fi twist on the Rip Van Winkle legend. Anthony, a World War I veteran working as a surveyor in Pennsylvania, gets trapped in a mine. He's exposed to a radioactive gas, falls into suspended animation, and wakes up almost 500 years later in 2419 AD. He finds a world conquered by technologically advanced invaders. This simple pulp magazine story provided the core template. A relatable guy from our time acts as the audience's guide to a complex and often hostile future. The real game changer, though, was his jump from the magazine rack to the newspaper stand. A newspaper syndicate boss saw the potential in Anthony Rogers and convinced the creator, Philip Francis Nallon, to adapt it into a daily comic strip. That's when the new nickname stuck. And on January 7th, 1929, the Buck Rogers comic strip launched. This was revolutionary. Other strips had elements of fantasy, but Buck Rogers was the first major, mainstream, daily comic strip dedicated purely to science fiction. It brought futuristic concepts to millions of regular people over their morning coffee. The strip was an instant sensation, introducing a visual vocabulary for the future: rocket, ships, ray guns, which they called disintegrator pistols, and life on other worlds. It offered a daily dose of high-tech escapism right as the Great Depression was starting. Now, for many people born after 1970, the name Buck Rogers means one thing: the flashy 1979 TV show, Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. This series was a direct result of the Star Wars craze. When George Lucas's 1977 blockbuster proved audiences were hungry for space opera, producer Glenn A. Larson revived the long-dormant Buck Rogers property. This version updated the origin. Buck was a NASA astronaut whose shuttle is frozen in time for over 500 years. He wakes up to a rebuilt Earth protected by the Earth Defense Directorate. The show was pure late 70s camp, complete with a sassy robot sidekick named Tweaky, voiced by the legendary Mel Blanc, who gave him that famous bitty 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 catchphrase, and the formidable Colonel Wilma Deering. Speaking of Wilma Deering, she's actually one of the most important parts of the Buck Rogers legacy. In the 1920s and 30s, female characters in adventure stories were usually just damsels in distress. Wilma was different. From her very first appearance in the novella, she was central and capable. When Rogers first wakes up, Wilma is a lieutenant in the Resistance, a skilled pilot, and a fierce soldier in her own right. She's his partner in adventure, fighting side by side with him. She was never just a romantic interest. The TV series continued this, with Colonel Deering commanding the entire planet's fighter squadron. For decades, Wilma paved the way for future sci-fi heroines like Princess Leia and Ellen Ripley. But you can't talk about Buck Rogers without mentioning his great sci-fi rival, Flash Gordon. Buck was the undisputed king of sci-fi comics in the early 1930s, and a rival syndicate wanted a piece of that action. So, in 1934, they tasked artist Alex Raymond with creating a hero to go head-to-head with Buck. The result was Flash Gordon. While Buck was a man from our time using his 20th century wits on a futuristic Earth, Flash was Apollo. Player immediately whisked away to the alien planet Mongo to battle the flamboyant tyrant Ming, the Merciless. Flash's world was pure space fantasy, lavish kingdoms, sharkmen, and hawkmen. Buck's was initially more focused on futuristic technology and guerrilla warfare on Earth. Together, these two defined the major branches of pulp science fiction. Beyond the comics and TV, Buck Rogers was a massive brand, and his most iconic piece of merchandise was the ray gun. In 1934, the John F. Diehl Company partnered with the Daisy Manufacturing Company to create the first ever toy ray gun, the XC-31 rocket pistol. This wasn't just a piece of plastic. It was a blued steel pop gun that zapped with a loud pop and a flash of harmless sparks. It was a smash hit, selling an estimated 2 million units in the first year alone. It was, essentially, the lightsaber of the 1930s. It's almost impossible to overstate the influence of Buck Rogers. Before him, sci-fi was mostly H.G. Wells and Jules Verne. Buck Rogers took high-concept ideas and made them visual, accessible, and fun for a mass audience. He provided the blueprint for countless tropes we take for granted. The man out of time, the jetpack, which he called a flying belt, and the heroic trio of the hero, the warrior love interest, and the brilliant scientist mentor. Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, cited Buck Rogers as a primary influence. George Lucas has spoken about the impact of the serials on the creation of Star Wars. Every time a hero zips up a jetpack, or a space pilot radios back to Earth Command, they are echoing the adventures that Buck Rogers pioneered nearly 100 years ago. Buck Rogers has faded and returned many times over the last century. But the reason he remains a relevant idea is that he's the ultimate audience surrogate. His origin story is a literary tool that allows a writer to explore a complex future through the fresh, relatable eyes of a contemporary person. It allows for wonder, confusion, and exposition all at once. Buck Rogers represents the enduring human capacity to adapt, to explore, and to hold on to our values, even when the entire world changes around us. He is the enduring spirit of adventure, a 20th century man forever leaping into the 25th. To read daily fact-based articles, head over to www.1sintera blog. And don't forget to visit our Zentara blog YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe or follow this podcast on Spotify for daily episodes that will expand your minds.